Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Shi. This is Victor Shi. It is Monday, June 12th, and I know this is going to be a big week, and all of you are very eager to hear about the Trump indictment. But today, I have a very special episode for you of On the Move, which will talk about how we can take back our state legislatures and elected bodies with more young people running for and winning office. And to help me do that is Amanda Litman, who runs Run for Something, an organization that recruits and trains young people to run for office across America. Amanda, it is so great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Anytime, Victor.
So you and I both know the importance of 2024 is going to be big for our country. But I first want to ask you about some of the amazing things that Run for Something has accomplished in recent elections. Give us a sense of what you've been seeing with young people and their enthusiasm running for office right now.
So Run for Something has been around since 2017, and in the 6 years we've existed, we've helped identify more than 130,000 young people all across the country in all 50 states, mostly women, mostly people of color, about a quarter LGBTQ+, who are interested in running for office for the very first time. Run for Something explicitly works with folks running for city council, school board, library board, state house, state senate, one of the 500,000 positions that build up our government and make it function better for more people. In the 6 years we've been around, we've helped elect nearly 1,000 young people across 49 states,
Wow.
and they're amazing, and they're already doing incredible work making life better.
And how have those numbers shifted or increased since 2022? Because 2022 we saw a huge number of young people run for and win office. How has that looked since that time?
Such a good question. 2022 was actually our best recruitment year yet, which I think is telling. It gives you a sense this wasn't just about Trump. And in fact, when we did a bunch of surveys early on in 2017, 2018, 2019, only 3% of the people who signed up with us and actually got on the ballot even mentioned Trump as the reason for running. This was never really about him. He was sort of like the water people were swimming in, but he wasn't the bait that hooked them. Since then, we've certainly seen a bit of a slowdown. Our numbers have gone from like 500 or 600 on average in a week to 200 to 300 on average in a week, which totally makes sense. Things are a little bit slower, but we have noticed in particular moments around abortion bans coming up in states when the Tennessee Republicans kicked out the Tennessee Three from the state legislature, a surge of young people saying, I will not stand for this. I am ready to run for office myself.
Very interesting. And that was part of the question I want to ask you next, which is why do you think so many young people are running for office at this moment of time? Is there some sort of kind of overall message or kind of theme that gets young people out there running?
Definitely. I think they're frustrated by representation. They're seeing government that doesn't look like them, doesn't understand their problems, doesn't seem to care about the problems they're facing. I think especially on issues like reproductive health, like LGBT equality, like gun violence, and especially housing, which we don't often think about as a young person's issue, but you know this, thinking about how to approach the housing market to buy a house or to rent a house or an apartment is very different in your 20s and 30s now than it was in your 20s and 30s even a decade ago or 2 decades ago when many of our parents were engaging in the housing market. So a lot of this is about the issues. It's about representation. It's also about an understanding that our opponents are no longer on the level. And this is the thing I think I've been particularly intrigued by. Older generations of Democrats, especially, although not all of them, but many of them, approach politics of a place of bipartisanship. They want to engage with the other party in a way of good faith negotiation. That these are people who are like ready to govern, and it's just a difference of style, maybe, or of details. That is not who the Republican Party is anymore in most places, and young people understand that intimately, and they are not interested in messing around. They want to approach this full force.
That's super fascinating. And one of the things that I often come about when talking with young voters, like the initial challenge is getting young people to care about politics and knowing kind of what that kind of thing is that will spur them. As an organization that really recruits and tries to mobilize young people, what do you see as kind of the best way to spur that initial civic engagement? Because I mean, people always say, if you vote, the younger you vote, the more kind of lifelong voter you'll become. That kind of builds that habit. But that first step is so important. What do you see as kind of the most important thing to get young people to care about politics, at least?
You got to ask them and be on the level with them. I think young people especially can smell bullshit when they hear it and when they see it, and when they smell it. They know when people are trying to lie to them or try to pander to them. So be honest, be authentic, be genuine, connect to the problems they care about. Talk about the things going on in their lives. Like, yes, Social Security and Medicare are incredibly important. But that's not the things that a 20-something is dealing with right now. A 20-something is thinking about the cost of education and rental units and where and how they're going to get to school during the day. So talk about the things that they care about. and be on the platforms they're on. I don't know any 19-year-old that has a Facebook account anymore unless they absolutely have to. So be where young people are and do so in a way that is genuine.
Absolutely. Well, one of the other things that we learned from 2022, especially with the candidacy of Maxwell Frost, is
Mhm.
the number of barriers that are posed to young people and that prevent young people from really running for office, I think. Walk us through some of what you think are some of the biggest barriers for young people running for office and what some of the things that Run for Something are doing to alleviate and kind of take down those barriers.
Well, I think there's a couple different types of barriers we're talking about. There are structural ones set up by the government institutions themselves, from the lack of pay many of these offices have. Most of the offices Run for Something candidates run for are not fully paid, even though they are often full-time work. There's no child care. You have to live often further away from where you're actually working, especially if you're running
Yeah,
or working,
yeah.
serving in state legislature. You might have to maintain two households for a period of time. These are things that we're working to change, and often you have to win the power in order to change the structure of them.
Mhm.
And this is stuff that is intentional. It's meant to keep young people, women, people of color, anyone who doesn't have a ton of money out of these systems. So when you feel like you're running up against a brick wall, it's because that brick wall was put there in front of you. Then there's the issues of gatekeepers. These are people like party operators and activists, funders, even press sometimes, so that's changing a little bit now, who don't think young people can win, so don't engage with them in a way that would help them win.
Mm.
It becomes a tautological truism. That person can't win, and I know I'm right, so I'm not going to help them. Then they don't win. Like, I was correct in the first place.
Yeah.
That's a place that Run for Something is really trying to push the needle on. We want to make sure young people know you absolutely can engage in this. You absolutely can run. It will be hard, but we will help you navigate these gatekeepers. We will help you have access to the information and tools and technology that you might need to get your campaign off the ground. And we will be with you and have a community of young people running with you every single step of the way.
Yeah. Have you seen a change at all in those gatekeepers that you were talking about? I mean, the Democratic Party and kind of these traditional kind of gatekeepers that prevent young people from running for office or kind of push a certain narrative. Is that narrative shifting at all?
Absolutely. And it's one of the coolest things we've seen in the last 6 years.
Yeah.
There is now a hunger for fresh voices. There is a hunger for new
Hmm.
perspectives in these rooms and for people who can connect with especially young voters in a way that is genuine and authentic.
Yeah.
Now, this is not true of everyone. And we will always run into people who think, especially anyone who doesn't meet the traditional understanding of a politician, which is usually rich, old, white men.
Yeah.
Anyone who doesn't meet that criteria is a risk. But we think it's a risk worth taking, and we're really glad to see so many other folks are engaging on that way too.
Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about, so once young people run for office and they win office, what have you seen in terms of like the results in office? Because I think a lot of people, at least I mean, when you hear a young person running for office, many old people might think, oh, well, they aren't as fit for the job or, they aren't as experienced. But what have you seen once they enter office right now? What are some of the results that you've seen across the country?
It has been incredible to watch young people run and win for local office and actually get shit done. In Berkeley,
Yeah.
California,
Yeah.
they ended single family zoning, got police
Wow.
out of traffic enforcement, which is a really big way in which police violence ends up occurring through traffic law engagements. In Harris County, Texas, 27-year-old Lena Hidalgo became the Harris County executive and then did
Mhm.
everything from 10x the election administration budget or 3x the election administration budget to $10 million. Ended cash bail,
Yeah.
changed the way that they did flood funding and emergency response in the county. Down in Florida, we've seen incredible work on school boards pushing back against DeSantis's bullshit around book bans. Here in New York, where I live, a young state senator, Zelmer Myrie, helped bring early voting to New York and bring more democracy to New York. Couldn't be more important. In Pennsylvania, state legislators in the state caucus introduced the first ever student loan debt caucus. They introduced a group of legislators who were ready to tackle student loans. And Pennsylvanians held the highest amount of student loan debt of any state in the country. And until you
Wow.
had young legislators there thinking about this and tackling this themselves, there was no one there to think about it. And we're excited to see the more progress they'll be able to make over the years to come.
Oh my God. That's so incredible. And as you head into 2024, what is your message to young people out there who might be first-time voters, might be turning 18, might be eligible to run for office on those state and local levels? What do you have to tell them about kind of their role, how they navigate it, how they can maybe go into your website and get some resources?
It is never too early and almost never too late to get started running for office. It might not be too late for 2023, depending on where you are, but especially for 2024, it is definitely not too late. You can go to runforwhat.net, enter your information, your address, and we will tell you all of the offices available for you to run for in 2024, including how to file, how to get on the ballot, and then you'll start getting more information from our team on what to do next. We are hopefully going to have more than 1,000 candidates running next year. This is going to be a movement, a sea change of leadership, and especially in a presidential year where anything can happen. Even if you think your race might be unwinnable or too small or unimportant, nothing is off the table in 2024. So we got to fight for it all. And if you're thinking about running, we want to help you.
And one of the other most common questions I get from older folks, especially, is what they can do to help out for young people and kind of what their role is. What do you have to say to people who are maybe older in generations who might be wondering, how can we support this next generation?
You see a young candidate running for office, give them money. Maybe it's just $5, maybe it's $10. That investment in them and telling them, showing them financially or with your time as a volunteer, knocking doors or making calls is so meaningful. The act of running for office is not just putting yourself out there. It's really like a transformational experience for who you are as a person and how you engage with our democracy. So hearing from folks, especially older generations, and seeing that they have your back, it is so validating and so credentialing. Tell your friends, tell your family to vote for young people, share it on Facebook, share it on social media. And if you have a young person in your life who you think would be amazing, ask them to run for office. Ask them again and again and again. You never know what the ask will be that will push them into doing it, but they need to hear from you.
No, it's so incredible what you're doing, and seeing just the number of young people who ran for office in 2022. I mean, I can't say like how big of an impact that has for people who might be young and maybe interested in politics, seeing themselves in government where it, like you said, it's traditionally old, white, rich men, is so important. And so thank you for all the work that you're doing to recruit and train these young people to run for office. And I am so grateful. And thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having me, Victor. Anytime.
Thanks so much. Well, Amanda Litman is amazing. She runs such a great organization. Check out her organization, Run for Something. They have a great website. They have so many great resources. Like she said, they've seen thousands of people already register to run in 2024, or that's at least what they're expected. And so it's going to be quite the year, and they're going to need all of our support. I think one of the most kind of eye-opening things for me, at least in this past election, and seeing people like Maxwell Frost run for Congress, the first ever Gen Zer, and then his experience actually getting to Congress and some of the barriers that were in place are just kind of everything that prevents a young person from running for office, all those structural things that keep young people from actually taking that step in running for office. But I think now with organizations like Run for Something, with hopefully all of our support and some of the donations that we can make for young people who are running, maybe we can start taking down those barriers and make it easier for young people to realize that they can also be in elected positions where traditionally, like we've said, it's older, richer, kind of whiter men who are in office. So the more we can get young people to get out there and run for office, that's going to be really important. And I think that's kind of that final step. Right now, you're seeing so many young people run for vote, but now taking that step further and getting young people to run for office and then win office, that's going to be amazing. But we've already seen some tremendous progress on that front. And it's thanks to organizations like Run for Something and people like Amanda Litman. So check out their website, check out Amanda Litman's work. It's incredible, and it's going to be so important as we head into that 2024 election, especially with all of these Republicans now and what they're trying to do in state legislatures, and with Donald Trump. We will have a kind of army of young people out there ready and willing to fight back. So thank you, Amanda, for joining me this morning. I know all of you are very eager to find out about the Trump indictment. I know last Friday, unfortunately, I couldn't be here, but today I just have a quick few thoughts. I know there's a lot of kind of commentary on TV. Andrew Weissman has been wonderful. MSNBC, I think, has been doing some great coverage. But just to me, as kind of a young person, seeing this moment from a Gen Z perspective, I think a lot of the people who I've talked to have really just kind of reinforced this point that if you remember back in 2018, that was the first election in which you saw a lot of Gen Zers eligible to vote. And that was the first election that Gen Zers came out and voted in historic numbers, more than any other previous midterm election, at least among young voters. And part of the reason why was because we saw this president who was not normal. We saw this president who did so much to tarnish our kind of brand as America, who tarnished our rule of law, who tarnished our institutions and just basic governing principles. And that's why you saw so many young people turn out to vote and then usher in this blue wave. Same in 2020, again in 2022, and just kind of this continued sense among young people that we just want normalcy. We want someone who will represent our interests, who will respect our democracy, who will respect our rule of law, our country above kind of themselves. And I think that sense of normalcy is going to be a huge motivating factor in 2024 for young people. And if Donald Trump ends up being the nominee, which it seems like he will, as someone who faces 2 indictments, as someone who faces, who has faced 2 impeachments, this is going to be a big moment, I think, for young people and kind of their awakening and seeing this president who just is not normal by any stretch of the imagination. And so I think for a lot of young people and Gen Zers out there, what Donald Trump poses is really dangerous. And I think for a lot of young people out there, they're going to see the choice between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And at the end of the day, they're going to vote for Joe Biden and cast aside any sort of, concern about age or, he's too out of touch. At the end of the day, it's Joe Biden who will protect our interests and who will deliver for our country. And I think that's just the kind of challenge ahead, is presenting in clear contrast as possible those kind of differences between Biden and Trump. And I think that will be a huge factor for young people getting out there to vote. But I know there's a lot of other kind of angles you can take this, but tomorrow we will be seeing Trump, or as of right now, we will be seeing Trump tomorrow at a Miami courthouse. There's some interesting talk about whether or not he will actually be arraigned, because he doesn't actually have a lawyer for him. So he doesn't have counsel, but at least that initial first step of going into the courthouse and going through that initial process will still play forward. So tomorrow we'll be following that. And we've got a great rest of the week in store for you for On the Move. So you don't want to miss that. It'll be some really exciting episodes right here on youtube.com/Politicon. You don't want to miss those at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. I'm also here on Twitter now. So if you want to watch live on Twitter, you can follow me at VictorShe2020. And we will be live every day right here on Twitter as well as on YouTube. So don't miss those. We have some great episodes in store for you, some great guests in store for you. So don't miss those. Thank you, everyone, for watching this episode of On the Move, and I will see you all tomorrow.